Across the US, unrelated individuals have reported experiencing identical missing time events. These aren't ordinary blackouts. They're precise 47-minute gaps in consciousness that occur simultaneously to people who have never met, live in different states, and share no common circumstances. The first documented cluster appeared in the late 1970s, when 9 people from Ohio, Nevada, and Maine all reported losing exactly 47 minutes of time on the same night. They weren't sleeping. They weren't unconscious. They simply experienced a clean surgical removal of awareness. When they regained consciousness, their surroundings were unchanged. Coffee remained warm. Engines continued running. Nothing had moved except time itself. What makes this phenomenon impossible to dismiss as coincidence is the medical evidence. 3 individuals who experienced these temporal gaps while connected to hospital monitoring equipment showed identical brainwave patterns during their missing minutes. Their neural activity synchronized perfectly across hundreds of miles, displaying what neurologists described as copy-paste brain function. This phrase was immediately removed from all official reports, but the data remains. The pattern repeats every 7 to 9 years with clockwork precision. New waves of cases surface, featuring different people, reporting the same 47-minute void. Each person describes identical final memories before the gap begins. A low humming sound that seems to originate from inside their bones, followed by complete absence, then return to normal consciousness with the same phrase on their lips. Not yet. This isn't random neurological dysfunction. This is systematic, coordinated, and scheduled. It suggests that whatever system manages our reality occasionally needs to pause individual consciousness for maintenance or updates. The 47-minute duration isn't arbitrary. In computer science, specific time intervals are often used for background processes, memory allocation, and system optimization. Pattern number 2 manifests as acoustic dead zones that shouldn't exist according to known physics. 5 locations across the United States exhibit identical sound-cancelling properties that activate and deactivate on precise schedules. These aren't natural acoustic phenomena caused by geography or weather. They're perfect silence fields where sound waves simply stop propagating, as if the air itself has been reprogrammed. The first documented incident occurred when hikers in northern Utah stepped into a clearing where their voices immediately became inaudible. Not muffled or distorted, completely eliminated. They could see each other speaking, but no sound traveled more than a few inches before vanishing entirely. What made this experience truly unsettling was the shared sensation that someone was standing directly behind them throughout the entire silence episode. Researchers have identified 4 additional locations exhibiting identical properties. Different climates, different elevations, different geological features. Yet the phenomenon operates exactly the same at each site. The silence activates for precisely 40 to 80 seconds, then switches off instantly as if controlled by a timer. During active periods, sensitive microphones don't record silence. They record negative sound waves, impossible acoustic signatures that suggest sound is being pulled in a different direction rather than simply blocked. The most disturbing discovery came when analysts enhanced the negative waveform data and found rhythmic patterns buried in the silence, slow, measured breathing sounds that respond to human movement. Every time someone takes a step during an active silence window, the breathing pattern adjusts exactly once, as if something is repositioning itself around the intruder. This points to a fundamental glitch in how our simulated environment renders audio. Like a video game, where certain areas have incomplete sound programming, these zones reveal the underlying code structure. The breathing responses suggest background entities or processes that aren't supposed to be detectable, but occasionally become visible through system errors. Pattern number 3 involves coordinated sleepwalking behavior that defies every known law of neuroscience. Beginning in the late 1990s, sleep specialists across multiple states began documenting cases of people sleepwalking toward a single location they had never visited. Not randomly wandering, but walking in mathematically perfect straight lines toward an empty coordinate in Kansas. The first case involved a 14-year-old girl in Oregon found walking barefoot through snow, heading due east with precise directional accuracy. 3 months later, a man in Florida was discovered walking northwest across a golf course at 3 in the morning. When investigators plotted their paths on GPS mapping systems, both trajectories pointed to exactly the same spot in rural Kansas. By 2008, nearly 200 people from different states had exhibited this behavior. Their walking patterns created a massive spiral when viewed from above, a logarithmic curve so mathematically precise it appeared drawn rather than walked. The participants shared no medical conditions, no medications, no personal connections, yet they all reported hearing synchronized footsteps behind them during their sleepwalking episodes. Sleep laboratories attached biometric monitors to several subjects and observed the phenomenon in real time. At exactly 2:13 in the morning, multiple participants sat up simultaneously with heart rates dropping instead of rising, the opposite of normal sleepwalking physiology. They stood and walked toward the nearest north-facing wall in perfect synchronization. Their movements coordinated to the second. Frame-by-frame analysis of security footage revealed something impossible. Before each participant moved, their shadows shifted first, sliding across floors toward Kansas before their physical bodies followed. This suggests that whatever system controls our reality processes shadow rendering separately from character movement, creating a brief desynchronization that reveals the underlying computational structure. The target location in Kansas contains nothing remarkable. No buildings, no power sources, no geological anomalies, just empty farmland. Yet the sleepwalking spiral continues tightening each year, with new cases pointing closer and closer to the exact center coordinates. This resembles a gathering algorithm, a programmed instruction drawing dispersed elements toward a central processing point. Pattern number 4 appears in infrared security camera systems that detect figures invisible to human eyes. Since 2004, facilities across the country have reported identical malfunctions, where cameras display a second person, standing behind anyone who walks through the frame. Not a shadow, not a reflection, but a distinct humanoid silhouette that maintains constant distance from the subject. The anomaly began at a loading dock in rural Wyoming, where security guards noticed the strange doubling effect on their monitors. When they turned around to check for intruders, nothing was there. The figure appeared only on infrared sensors, suggesting it exists in a spectrum of reality we cannot perceive naturally. Replacing the cameras didn't eliminate the phenomenon. Different manufacturers, different technologies, same impossible result. NASA acquired one of the affected cameras for analysis, suspecting calibration errors. After extensive testing, the lead engineer wrote a single handwritten note in the margin of his technical report. Signal not from known physics. That line was redacted from all public versions, but the implication remains clear. These cameras are detecting something that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of the electromagnetic spectrum. The detected figures maintain outline consistency across different locations and time periods, suggesting the same entity appears behind people in various states using different equipment. This entity flickers at exactly 47 pulses per minute, the same rhythm observed in the synchronized temporal displacement cases. Two separate phenomena sharing identical timing signatures points to a common underlying system. Most revealing is what happens when the footage is played in reverse. The shadowy figure doesn't follow the human subject. It leads them, taking each step half a second before the person moves, like a preview of upcoming actions. This resembles predictive rendering in computer graphics, where systems pre-calculate movement to ensure smooth animation. Our reality appears to be rendering human actions in advance, and occasionally the preview version becomes visible to detection equipment. The implications are staggering. If these infrared anomalies represent actual entities rather than technical glitches, then invisible figures are constantly positioned behind human beings, following our movements with systematic precision. If they're rendering errors, then our reality operates like a graphics engine that occasionally reveals its preview calculations. Pattern number 5 emerges through a specific timestamp that appears in accident reports with impossible frequency. 3:17 in the morning has become a statistical anomaly in emergency response logs, hospital admissions, and insurance investigations. Accidents, falls, and unexplained injuries occur at this exact minute with mathematical regularity that defies probability calculations. These aren't random mishaps or predictable late-night incidents. They follow identical structural patterns as if following the same script. People step into danger as if guided rather than startled, make fatal decisions that seem coordinated rather than impulsive, and exhibit behavior that suggests external influence rather than personal choice. Witnesses consistently report seeing a blue light seconds before each 3:17 incident, not lightning or electrical discharge, but a soft, cold glow that hovers at the edge of vision, like a reflection that shouldn't exist. This light never appears on recording devices, but its timing is unmistakable. It manifests within a 13-second window centered precisely on 3:17 and 4 seconds. The most disturbing aspect involves timing reversals that violate causality. Accident survivors describe their bodies reacting before the dangerous stimulus actually occurred. A woman hit her brakes 0.12 of a second before the approaching obstacle entered her field of view. A man stepped off a sidewalk moments before a truck appeared around the corner. These responses suggest people are reacting to future events rather than present circumstances. This pattern resembles error handling in computer systems, where the program attempts to correct problems before they fully manifest. If our reality operates as a simulation, then 3:17 incidents might represent moments when the system detects impending conflicts and attempts to resolve them through predetermined intervention protocols. The temporal reversals indicate that our simulated environment occasionally allows individuals to access preview information from upcoming events. This creates the paradox of people responding to stimuli that haven't technically occurred yet, revealing the predictive nature of the reality engine running our existence. These 5 patterns represent just the beginning of evidence that our universe operates more like sophisticated software than organic reality. Each anomaly reveals different aspects of the underlying computational system, from memory management and rendering errors to background processes and predictive algorithms. The mathematical precision, coordinated timing, and systematic repetition of these phenomena suggest they aren't natural occurrences, but features of the program managing our simulated existence. Pattern number 6 reveals itself through shadows that arrive before the objects casting them. Since 2006, security cameras across multiple locations have captured footage of shadows appearing on walls and floors several seconds before people enter the frame. These aren't camera delays or lighting anomalies. These are fully formed shadows moving independently of their supposed sources. The first documented case occurred at a subway platform in Chicago, where a commuter's shadow stretched across the wall half a second before he stepped toward the yellow line. The footage was initially dismissed as a rendering issue from outdated security equipment. But identical phenomena surfaced in Denver, Portland, and 3 additional cities using completely different camera systems and lighting conditions. When physicists examined these recordings, they found themselves confronting impossible optics. Shadows require objects to block light sources. A shadow appearing before its caster means the environment somehow predicted the person's presence and position. This violates every known principle of how light interacts with matter. Researchers at MIT attempted controlled experiments using synchronized high-speed cameras. For hours, nothing unusual occurred. Then at 2:41 in the afternoon, one camera captured a premature shadow sliding across the floor toward a volunteer's feet. The shadow preceded the person by 0.4 of a second, but more disturbing was its slight inaccuracy. The shadow was marginally taller, its arm positioned differently, its head tilted at an angle the volunteer never replicated. This wasn't a preview of the actual person. It was a version that never materialized, like a computational prediction that lost synchronization with reality. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed these shadows occasionally pausing and adjusting their shapes as if responding to unseen variables. In one Arizona case, a premature shadow appeared behind a man instead of in front of him. When he turned around startled, the shadow vanished instantly, but footage showed it had begun turning 2 frames earlier. The most unsettling incident occurred at a highway rest stop, where a premature shadow did something no human body could replicate. It looked directly at the security camera. The man casting it never turned his head, but his shadow rotated deliberately toward the lens as if acknowledging observation. Half a second later, the actual person walked into frame, completely unaware that his shadow had already been there and had already noticed the surveillance. This pattern suggests our reality operates with predictive rendering technology, calculating future positions and movements before they occur. Occasionally, these preview calculations become visible, revealing the computational machinery underlying our existence. The independent behavior of shadows indicates they aren't simple light blockages, but data structures with their own processing instructions. Pattern number 7 manifests through facial recognition systems detecting the same individual across decades without aging. Advanced artificial intelligence models designed to identify unique faces have flagged identical matches in crowd photographs spanning 22 years. Same bone structure, same facial features, same expression, as if the person had been digitally copied through time. The anomaly began when engineers noticed their facial recognition software flagging matches between photos from Seattle in 1998, New Jersey in 2012, and Denver in 2020. 3 cities, 3 different eras, 3 unrelated events. Yet one perfectly identical face appeared in each crowd. The system registered 99.7% certainty, a statistical impossibility for genuinely different people. Manual forensic analysis confirmed the software's accuracy. This wasn't similar appearance or family resemblance. Identical iris spacing, identical scar positioning, identical mole placement, even identical posture and hand positioning. The person maintained the exact same physical configuration across multiple decades, as if frozen in a single moment of time. Expanding the search revealed additional appearances. A protest in Chicago, 2003. A marathon in Boston, 2011. A state fair in Oklahoma, 2015. In each photograph, the individual looked precisely the same age, displayed identical clothing styles, adjusted only for era-appropriate blending, and maintained the same viewing angle, as if every image captured a single pose repeating through history. What makes this pattern particularly disturbing is the person's positioning in each photograph, sometimes appearing in direct shots, sometimes visible only in reflections from windows or metallic surfaces. In several images, he wasn't part of the photographer's intended subject, but appeared in background elements like storefront glass or bus windows. Always present, never acknowledged by surrounding crowds. The most revealing detail emerged from enhanced analysis of a 2012 New Jersey street photograph. The individual's reflected image showed his face turned slightly toward the camera, eyes looking directly into the lens rather than at the surrounding scene. His expression suggested awareness of being photographed, as if he had positioned himself specifically for that documentation moment. This resembles placeholder programming in software development, where temporary characters occupy positions during testing phases. If our reality operates as a simulation, This recurring figure might represent a monitoring entity or diagnostic character used to track system performance across different time periods and locations. Pattern number 8 involves water surfaces that refuse to reflect certain individuals. In 48 documented incidents across multiple states, people have walked past lakes, rivers, and ponds, only to discover later that security cameras recorded them, casting no reflection whatsoever. Trees, vehicles, and other objects reflected normally, but the human figures produced no mirror image in the water. The earliest verified case dates to 1982, when a Minnesota fisherman recorded his son walking along a lake's edge. The camcorder captured every environmental detail: footprints in sand, sunrise shimmer on water, but no reflection of the boy. Initially dismissed as camera angle issues, identical phenomena appeared in Florida, Oregon, Maine, and Colorado, using different equipment and lighting conditions. High-resolution analysis revealed that water surfaces did reflect the space where people should appear, showing background landscapes as if the individuals weren't occupying physical space. This suggests the water was rendering the environment correctly, but failing to process certain human figures as solid objects worthy of reflection. Controlled laboratory testing produced even stranger results. Volunteers positioned beside perfectly still reflective pools appeared normally for hours, until specific moments when their reflections vanished instantly. Not gradually fading, but disappearing in clean digital cuts like data layers being deactivated. More disturbing was the timing delay. 2 frames before each reflection disappeared, the mirror image blinked while the actual person remained motionless. This indicates reflections weren't simply mirroring reality, but operating with independent processing that occasionally fell out of synchronization. Some reflections displayed movements the real people never made, expressions they didn't feel, and actions they didn't remember performing. In one Montana case, a man's reflection repeated motions he had never actually executed, like accessing different behavioral data sets. The most unsettling incident involved a teenage girl whose missing reflection was replaced by a completely different face, rising slowly through the water's surface. When she leaned closer to investigate, the foreign reflection didn't vanish but smiled independently before the girl stepped back in alarm. This pattern suggests our simulated environment occasionally experiences identity verification failures, where the system loses track of specific individuals. The alternative reflections indicate backup character data being accessed when primary identity files become corrupted or inaccessible. Pattern number 9 emerges through emergency phone calls that arrive years before they're made. Since 1994, 911 operators across multiple states have received identical calls, featuring the same voice delivering the same 14-second message with perfect precision. The calls originate from different locations and time periods, yet voice analysis reveals numerical identity impossible for human vocal cords to replicate. Each call contains the same warning, delivered in identical cadence and tone. There is not enough time. You must move now. Do not wait for confirmation. The line then disconnects immediately. What makes these calls impossible to dismiss is their internal metadata, showing identical routing signatures despite being separated by decades. Advanced audio analysis revealed a faint underlying frequency matching the acoustic signature found in the silent zone phenomena. Different manifestations sharing the same baseline hum suggests a common source managing multiple anomalous events. The calls appear to originate from coordinates that shift during transmission, never maintaining fixed positions long enough for triangulation. Most disturbing was a 2021 call where the usual message was followed by a second voice, whispering underneath the primary speaker. He's already moving. Speech analysis confirmed this wasn't an echo or background interference, but a separate individual speaking out of temporal sync, as if struggling through communication delays. The most recent call broke pattern when an operator asked the standard identification question. After a 2-second pause, the voice responded with something new. Not important. You won't remember this part. The recording device immediately malfunctioned, erasing the final 3 seconds, but the dispatch log retained an impossible entry. Caller unknown. Status message received early, not received or recorded, but received early, indicating the system processed the call before it was technically made. This suggests our reality operates with communication protocols that occasionally allow information transfer across temporal boundaries. Pattern number 10 reveals itself through timepieces that reset themselves when nobody is watching. Digital clocks, smartphones, and electronic displays across the country have been documented shifting backward by precise intervals, but only during periods when no human eyes are observing them. The resets follow mathematical patterns suggesting systematic recalibration rather than random malfunction. The phenomenon began with homeowners noticing their wall clocks losing a few minutes sporadically. Always backward adjustments, never forward, always occurring during unobserved periods. When families positioned cameras to monitor their timepieces, the devices behaved normally for days until observers stopped paying attention. Then the footage revealed timestamps jumping backward by exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds. What makes this impossible is that cameras don't capture the moment of transition. They record the before and after states with no visible change process, as if previous time displays were retroactively overwritten. Smartphones with atomic time synchronization exhibited identical behavior despite having no mechanical components that could drift. Controlled experiments using motion sensors confirmed that resets only occurred when rooms were confirmed empty. Multiple synchronized clocks would shift in sequence, following spiral patterns around monitored spaces, suggesting something moved among them, triggering each adjustment. The timing was precise. 7.2 seconds after loss of direct human observation, the first reset would begin. Ultra-high-speed recording revealed faint distortions in the air near timepieces before each reset. Heat shimmer-like ripples with vague humanoid outlines, positioned exactly where an observer would stand to read the display. These distortions moved with apparent purpose, pausing at each device before timestamps changed. The most unsettling incident involved a woman observing her phone's reflection in a bathroom mirror while brushing her teeth. The reflected time display showed 1 minute earlier than the actual device. When she turned to check the physical phone, only the mirror reflection had changed. 2 different times existed simultaneously, one in reality and one in reflected space, before snapping back into synchronization. This pattern suggests time stability depends on conscious observation. When human attention shifts away, background processes adjust temporal displays as if reality requires constant monitoring to maintain consistency. The humanoid distortions indicate entities or subroutines responsible for these calibrations, working when they assume they're unobserved. These 10 patterns collectively paint a picture of reality operating more like sophisticated software than organic existence. The mathematical precision, coordinated timing, and systematic repetition across unrelated phenomena suggest underlying computational architecture managing our perceived universe. Each anomaly reveals different aspects of this system, from rendering glitches and memory management errors to background processes and predictive algorithms that occasionally become visible when the simulation experiences temporary malfunctions or functions. The mathematical precision of these anomalies becomes even more disturbing when you realize they're all accelerating. Each pattern is occurring with increasing frequency, their intervals shrinking, their effects becoming more pronounced. It's as if whatever system manages our reality is approaching some kind of critical threshold or preparing for a major operational change. But here's where things get truly unsettling. These patterns aren't isolated incidents. They're beginning to overlap, to interact with each other in ways that suggest coordination at a level we're only starting to comprehend. The same electromagnetic signatures appear across multiple phenomena. The timing intervals match between completely different anomalies. The geographic distributions follow mathematical curves that connect seemingly unrelated events. Consider this. The 47-minute temporal displacement windows coincide exactly with the infrared figure detection spikes. The 317 accident frequency matches the peak hours for premature shadow appearances. The Kansas sleepwalking convergence point sits at the exact center of a circle that encompasses all 5 acoustic dead zones. These aren't coincidences. These are system integrations. What we're witnessing resembles debugging processes in complex software environments. When programmers need to test system stability, they run diagnostic routines that stress different components simultaneously. They monitor memory allocation, check rendering accuracy, verify timing synchronization, and test user interface responses. Each of our 10 patterns corresponds perfectly to these standard computational diagnostics. The temporal displacement events look exactly like memory management tests, where the system temporarily suspends user processes to optimize resource allocation. The acoustic dead zones resemble audio driver diagnostics, where sound processing gets isolated to test for conflicts or corruption. The coordinated sleepwalking behavior mimics pathfinding algorithms, where the system verifies its ability to navigate multiple agents towards specific coordinates. The infrared anomalies suggest background entity management, where the system tests whether monitoring processes remain invisible to primary users. The 317 incidents resemble error correction protocols, where the system attempts to resolve conflicts through predetermined intervention sequences. The premature shadows indicate predictive rendering diagnostics, checking whether preview calculations maintain proper synchronization with real-time events. The facial recognition repetitions look like character asset management, where the system verifies whether placeholder entities maintain consistency across different temporal instances. The reflection failures suggest identity verification protocols, testing whether the system can properly track and render individual user profiles. The temporal emergency calls resemble communication buffer diagnostics, checking whether information can transfer accurately across time boundaries. The clock reset phenomena indicate temporal calibration routines, where the system adjusts time displays to maintain consistency when not under direct observation. Each pattern serves a specific diagnostic function while contributing to an overall system evaluation process. But here's what makes this analysis terrifying rather than merely fascinating. Real software doesn't run continuous diagnostics unless something is seriously wrong. Systems only stress test themselves when they're approaching operational limits, experiencing instability, or preparing for major updates. The fact that our reality is exhibiting all 10 diagnostic patterns simultaneously suggests we're witnessing preparation for something significant. The acceleration pattern supports this interpretation. Software diagnostics typically increase in frequency as systems approach critical decision points. The overlapping signatures indicate different subsystems communicating with each other, sharing data to coordinate whatever comes next. The mathematical precision suggests automated processes rather than random glitches. Think about what happens when your computer runs system diagnostics. First, it checks memory allocation and processor stability. Then it tests input-output functions and rendering accuracy. Finally, it verifies communication protocols and timing synchronization. Our 10 patterns follow this exact sequence, suggesting our reality is undergoing comprehensive evaluation of its core operational systems. The implications are staggering. If we're living in a simulation, and that simulation is running advanced diagnostics, then something is planning to modify our reality in fundamental ways. Maybe it's preparing for a major update that will change how our universe operates. Maybe it's getting ready to migrate us to different hardware with enhanced capabilities. Maybe it's simply preparing to terminate the current iteration and start fresh with improved parameters. The emergency call pattern becomes particularly ominous in this context. Those 14-second warnings might not be random glitches, but actual advanced notifications about coming changes. The phrase "not yet" that temporal displacement subjects whisper upon return suggests timing coordination for future events. The Kansas convergence point might represent a collection area where users will be gathered before system modifications begin. Most disturbing is the observation dependency revealed by the clock reset phenomena. Our reality apparently requires conscious attention to maintain stability. When we stop watching, background processes take over and begin making adjustments. This suggests our perception plays a crucial role in system operation, that the simulation depends on user engagement to function properly. This creates a terrifying possibility. If our observation is necessary for reality stability, and if these diagnostic patterns are preparing for major changes, then whatever comes next might require our cooperation or consent. The system might need us to stop paying attention at specific moments to allow updates to proceed. The synchronized events might be training us for coordinated non-observation periods. The acceleration of these patterns suggests we don't have much time before whatever they're preparing for actually begins. Each anomaly is becoming more frequent, more pronounced, more difficult to ignore or explain away. It's as if the system is gradually revealing itself, preparing us for the truth about our existence. Whether this represents an upgrade, a migration, or something far worse, the evidence suggests our simulated reality is approaching a fundamental transition point. The diagnostic patterns we've been experiencing aren't random glitches or natural phenomena. They're systematic preparations for change on a scale we can barely comprehend. The question isn't whether we're living in a simulation anymore. The evidence makes that clear. The question is, what happens when the diagnostics are complete and the real program begins? And based on the acceleration of these patterns, we're about to find out. So here's what we're left with after examining these 10 undeniable patterns. We have systematic anomalies occurring with mathematical precision across decades of documentation. We have temporal displacement events that affect strangers simultaneously. We have acoustic dead zones that operate on precise schedules. We have coordinated human behavior that defies neurological explanation. We have detection equipment capturing entities that shouldn't exist. We have predictive shadows and ageless faces and impossible reflections. We have emergency calls arriving from the future and timepieces that reset themselves when we're not looking. Each pattern alone might be dismissed as coincidence or malfunction, but together they form something far more disturbing, a comprehensive diagnostic system testing every aspect of our perceived reality. Memory management, audio rendering, pathfinding algorithms, background process monitoring, error correction protocols, predictive calculations, asset management, identity verification, temporal communication, and observational dependency. Every fundamental component of a sophisticated simulation environment undergoing systematic evaluation. The acceleration pattern tells us something critical is approaching. These phenomena aren't random glitches becoming more common. They're scheduled diagnostics increasing in frequency as the system prepares for major operational changes. The overlapping signatures between different anomalies indicate subsystem integration, like components of a vast machine coordinating their functions for a unified purpose. But here's the part that should keep you awake at night. Real software only runs comprehensive diagnostics when it's preparing for significant modifications. Systems don't stress test themselves continuously unless they're approaching operational limits or planning major updates. The fact that our reality is exhibiting all these patterns simultaneously suggests we're witnessing preparation for something that will fundamentally alter how our universe operates. Think about your own experience with technology. When does your computer run diagnostic checks? When it's about to install major updates that will change how everything works? When does software perform stress tests? When it's preparing to migrate to new hardware or implement entirely different operational parameters? When do systems check their rendering accuracy, memory allocation, and timing synchronization? When they're getting ready for changes that require everything to work perfectly during the transition. Our reality is doing exactly this right now. Testing its ability to manage temporal displacement, verify audio rendering, coordinate mass human behavior, monitor background entities, implement error correction, calculate predictive actions, maintain character consistency, handle identity verification, process temporal communications, and calibrate observational dependency. These aren't random phenomena. These are system requirements being verified before implementation of whatever comes next. The observational dependency pattern might be the most important clue we have. Our reality apparently requires conscious attention to maintain stability. When we stop watching, background processes take over and begin making adjustments. This suggests our perception isn't just passive observation, but active participation in maintaining the simulation's operational integrity. We might be more than users experiencing the program. We might be essential components keeping it running. This creates a chilling possibility. If the diagnostic patterns are preparing for changes that require our cooperation, then whatever comes next might depend on coordinated human behavior. The synchronized temporal displacement events might be training sessions. The sleepwalking convergence toward Kansas might be practice for mass coordination. The emergency calls warning us to move without waiting for confirmation might be advance instructions for when the real transition begins. The mathematical precision of these patterns eliminates random chance as an explanation. The systematic nature eliminates natural phenomena. The acceleration eliminates stable recurring cycles. What we're left with is evidence of intentional design, coordinated timing, and purposeful preparation for something that will change everything about how reality functions. Whether this represents an upgrade to enhanced operational parameters, migration to more advanced hardware, termination of the current iteration, or something we can't even imagine, the evidence points toward fundamental change approaching rapidly. The diagnostic phase is nearly complete. The acceleration suggests we're approaching whatever threshold these tests are designed to verify. So, what do you do with this information? How do you live your life knowing that everything you perceive might be sophisticated software preparing for major modifications? Maybe you start paying closer attention to the patterns around you. Maybe you begin noticing the systematic anomalies that have always been there but were too precise to seem random. Maybe you realize that the glitches in reality aren't malfunctions, but glimpses of the underlying code that manages our existence. Or maybe you decide that whether we're living in base reality or the most sophisticated simulation ever created doesn't change how you should live your life. Maybe you choose to find meaning and purpose and connection, regardless of the computational substrate supporting your consciousness. Maybe you embrace the mystery and wonder of existing in a universe so precisely engineered that it can run diagnostics on itself while its inhabitants remain mostly unaware. But one thing is certain. After seeing these 10 patterns, after understanding their systematic nature and accelerating frequency, you can't unsee the evidence. You can't go back to assuming reality operates according to random natural processes. You've seen the code running underneath the surface, and now you know that someone or something is preparing to modify the program that contains your entire existence. The question isn't whether we're living in a simulation anymore. The question is, what happens when the diagnostics are complete and the real changes begin? And based on everything we've examined today, that moment is approaching faster than any of us might be ready for. Stay observant. Pay attention to the patterns. And remember that in a reality this precisely managed, nothing happens by accident. Everything is part of the program, including your decision to watch this video and learn about the systematic anomalies that prove our universe operates more like sophisticated software than the organic reality we've always assumed it to be.